The Education Lounge podcast.
I've had very strange homework that I didn't understand at the time, and then when I look back, I get it. So I had this teacher in primary school, and he just made us go home and measure loads of round things, like cylindrical things, just the circumference. But he didn't say how to do it.
Oh, is this like comparing the circumference to like actually how long it is in real life, like when it's straightened out?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, no, it was I think he was getting us to spot a relationship between circumference and diameter, but at the time you're just kind of measuring things, and I was like, why am I measuring all of these things? And then you measured the diameter too, which was quite challenging because then where's the middle? Where's the midpoint? So he just set this really open-ended task at primary school, just create a table, and then you write the object, and you say what the circumference is and the diameter. And I remember thinking, all right, how do I measure this round thing? Because at that time we didn't have a superflex or anything like that, like no ruler that could be bent. It was solid rulers. So that was the first thing. How do I measure the circumference? So I found this piece of string, and then I went around these different objects and then stretched it out and found the circumference and then measured the diameter. And then he said, once you do that, take your circumference and divide it by your diameter. So we used a calculator to do that.
What year was this?
Year 6.
Okay.
So I didn't know what I was doing really at the time, but then you started to notice like the numbers were all sort of grouping around 3. At the time, I was really confused by this homework, and then when I got older, I was like, "Oh, I see, I see what I was doing at the time." And that's quite an interesting way of teaching the topic.
It's better than just like here's a worksheet with 20 questions, and then they give you the figures, and you're like, okay, yeah, 3.14, yeah 3.
It's
so
like
because you get to see it in like a real life situation.
It's called like guided discovery. So the teacher sort of facilitates the students' learning, and then we explore the idea and then come to some kind of conclusion. But he didn't necessarily teach us anything about this idea of pi. It was just to spot the relationship between the circumference and the diameter. So that was quite different from most other homeworks I've ever had. But I thought it was I always remember it. I don't know if you remember any homeworks that...
I don't actually. I don't remember a lot of... Like, I'm sure the stuff I did made a difference to now.
You didn't do anything that like sort of weird and out there that...
I think I did in primary school, but I can't remember the specific thing. I had one for music where it was like make your own musical instrument.
Ooh. Oh yeah, you do that in primary school, don't you?
Yeah, and you get like a...
I made a drum.
I don't know. Well, I've got like a Pringles can, and you put stuff through it and you fill it with rice and it becomes like a rain shaker type thing, and that was quite cool.
Yeah.
I don't know how it's applicable to like now, but
yeah.
I mean, it's creative. You get to make stuff. You get to hear how things work. It's kind of physics related, I guess, if you pushed it.
No, but that was I brought up that example just because it was so related to something that you learn later, and it's a really good example of just something that I didn't. It was a really good idea for homework.
Yeah, because you don't actually know what you're supposed to be looking for.
Yeah, so I even do that a bit now. So I
was going to say, yeah.
Like I integrate some of that into my own teaching. He was a really good teacher.
Usually, the ones I would do in terms of maths for here is demonstrating the circumference versus what it looks like in a straight line, and measuring the diagonal as opposed to the perpendicular. You know, when you're doing like area of a triangle, and a lot of people go for the perpendicular height. They go for the the diagonal where you're supposed to go for that. So I demonstrate with like a piece of string or something, like how much bigger what they're measuring is compared to what they should be measuring. And then for the younger ones, it's like when you're doing money, you say to the parent, like when you go to the shop, let them work out the change. And
I always used to do that for my mum. So that probably...
You'd be surprised though, a lot of people now don't
do that.
They don't.
No.
Yeah, they don't put the kids in that sort of situation, whereas that's where you would learn the most, probably.
Yeah, like, because I remember just my mum would get me to pay for something and say, like, okay, like, count the change off.
But now no one even
uses money. Yeah.
What about, did you ever get homework in school for subjects that you really weren't interested in?
Yes. Okay. So
I think we know the story, but
yeah, no. In terms of strange homework, the one that sort of sticks out is my art homework. Any sort of art homework, any sort of DT homework, I just did not enjoy at all. I found it quite strange, quite sort of
alien.
Alien, abstract. Being asked to draw a can of Coke was quite sort of alien to me.
Such a maths teacher.
Yeah, so in terms of sort of homeworks, I would say I found not particularly useful or enjoyable. Like, I couldn't really see the benefit of art. I just didn't. But
just art generally.
Yeah, I just in terms of the homework, no, I just didn't see the I couldn't see anything behind it. I was like, right, I don't really know what I'm doing. It was just something that I didn't enjoy. But in terms of virtually every single other subject, I could, especially now, I get the importance of doing and completing those pieces of homework, for be it geography, history, maths, science, whatever. I can understand the value behind it.
I think I learned the most from homework compared to actually being in school. I learned more from homework than actually being in school because, like for instance,
independent study, right?
As in because I think that works well for me. I think some people.
Yeah, I'm the complete opposite.
Yeah.
I would learn more actually in a class than homework. For me, like, homework is about reinforcing what you've already learned rather than actually learning it for the first time.
I did a lot of learning from the first time from homework because I used to not really listen in class, and then I used to just go home and then look at the homework and just be like, how do I do this? And then I just read the explanation and then I'd do it. But yeah, that's how I learned maths basically.
No, I get that, because I would say I'm definitely someone that's a bit more of an independent learner. I like to pick up books and read and learn sort of myself. So in that regard, homework helped a lot. Especially with sort of subjects like maths, physics, science, because the way you learn, well, one way to learn is, you go through some examples, right? You go through several examples and then you try and spot some sort of pattern, right? So you can see, okay, right, I can see this pattern developing, so it means this is how I do this particular thing. So in terms of, the value of homework, I definitely saw that.
Yeah, in primary school, we didn't really. I've got to be honest. In my school, I didn't really get homework. Like, apart from there was a few there was that teacher in year 6 who we had for a brief period of time, probably the best teacher that we had. But then he left. It's kind of a shame that, but he left, and I remember the first time I got homework. I think my mum said that I cried. I was like, oh,
why?
I was just very upset that I'd been given extra work. Like, I was inconsolable for hours, and then I started to realize, and it happened for like weeks as well. Like, as in, I just wouldn't want to do it, and then I finally realized that I was wasting more time crying about it than actually doing it. and then I started doing homework. And then I went to Forest, and it was ridiculous because we got so much homework. Like because I went from getting basically no homework to like it was like 2 to 3 hours a day or something like that. It was, and the days are quite long as well because you end at 4, and then you might have stuff after school.
Yeah, you would end at 4 with normal stuff, and then like we would go to
like orchestra
or whatever
like
else. So
athletics or that kind of thing, and it was like I'd end up working till like 9-10 o'clock doing homework basically because I need my nap after school as well. So I used to have a nap after school, and then I'd eat, and then I'd have a shower, then I'd sit down and do a little bit of homework, and by the time I got that all done, it was like 10.
See, once I've switched off, I've switched off. I can't like have food, have a nap, have a shower, and then sit down and do.
You know that's how. Are you surprised that I would have a nap? Like it's a very me thing to do. I like to have naps. Like after having a long day, have a little nap, then I get up, do something else. And then...
Yeah. Well, like our day would usually start like 6 in the morning. And you'd be at school early because your parents had to go to work or whatever. And then you'd have your whole day of school, then your extracurricular, then your homework.
And that's a big thing. If you've got a lot of extracurricular, it's really hard to fit in enough homework anyway. I think for us, it was... I noticed that after primary school, I was a really, really big reader. I used to find reading... At primary school, at least, like I'd read like all the time. I get in trouble for reading constantly.
I get in trouble for reading.
Yeah, like I'd read at really bad times.
Oh, okay.
So like I'd just take a book out, and then my parents would just be like, "John, put the book back," and stuff like that. So I just choose bad times to read.
We've had completely opposite experiences.
Yeah. and then
I was like, why have you not got a book with you?
And then in secondary school. Because just of the amount of homework, I found that my just reading went down a lot because I didn't have time to read. I just felt like, oh, I'm studying, so I'm kind of reading. But it's quite important to continue reading, so I think there needs to be quite a fine balance. Like, there was literally not enough time to do everything.
Yeah. I think we're going to do a whole separate podcast on that, aren't we? Not next month, but the one after.
Yeah.
About like reading and. What was your homework load like at school?
Well, first of all, I wouldn't. I've got to be honest. I wouldn't always do it. But
yeah, no, I was the same.
I think there's many in that boat now. But I think it wasn't. To be honest, it wasn't too bad. You know, I think especially if you compare sort of the amount that we get with other countries, you know, it just literally pales in comparison.
Is that true though? Because like, you know, so I was like looking at, because as I was researching this topic a bit, like in Asia, for instance, in like South Korea, they've got some of the best educational attainment levels in the world, and they actually receive very little homework. But then the reason why they receive very little homework is because their school day is so long. So they have time before school where they're doing work, and then they've got time after school, and then they've got all their private tuition things and stuff like that in the evening. And sometimes that can go on till like 11 o'clock. I've had students where it goes on till like 12 at night. Like they're off extracurricular stuff, and they don't have time to fit in homework like anywhere because it's all built into their day already.
I mean, I've been to India quite a lot. You know, even as a kid, quite a lot, and seen my cousins and the way they work, and I've seen the amount of homework that they've been given, and I can. My experience has been watching them. They've always had significantly more than what's sort of given in schools over here.
Yeah.
And like I said, you know, being someone who teaches now, I definitely see definitely see why it's important that you do your homework, complete your homework. For several reasons. If when you're completing your homework, it gives you an opportunity to go and speak to other people. Speak to your colleagues, your friends, engage in a dialogue about what you've completed. I used to do it in school and at university. You'd speak to your colleagues, find out how they've done a particular question, and what that does is it also gets you using the correct terminology, right? So the correct, whatever it may be, science or maths. And if you're using the correct terminology when it comes to sort of your note making, if you're using it when you're speaking, you're likely to be doing the same when you're making your notes. And so that aspect alone, I find quite useful when it comes to homework. I mean, what do you think?
I was going to say, is it? You said it's like several different reasons.
Yeah. So
would you say the main reason
was
is
one?
Yeah, but would you say the main reason is like to reinforce what you've already done in school, or to, like they say, you need like 10,000 hours to master a topic? Do you think it's mainly to get the practice in, or is it mainly reinforcing what you've learned, or a combination of both? Or
well, yeah, reinforcing what you've already learned, but to learn something in greater depth as well. Like I said, if it's something like maths or physics, right? You go through a whole load of examples, right? With maybe the examples that there may be tweaks in a question, maybe slight differences, slight changes, and then you start learning. All right, okay, this is how I tackle this. This is what I know about this particular topic. So it's not just to reinforce what you've learned in school. It's for you to actually study that thing in greater depth. Is my understanding, because what you should do is, when you're given homework, try your best to complete it, but then dig a little deeper as well. It's something that I used to do, not just look at the questions that I was given, but then formulate some of my own questions based on that, right? Because then
you're such a maths even at school.
So I used to do this. I used to do this in university too. So I'd look at papers, questions that I was given, and then also, so I'd try and solve those, and then try and come up with questions of my own. So I said, all right, okay, so I know how to tackle this. So if I change the problem by this much, right, if I rephrase it and restructure it so that it's this, how do I go about solving that?
Yeah, I did that for, like, say, English essays and stuff like that. So just imagining what could come up.
Yeah,
as an essay.
English
title.
is a good one as well. Yeah,
and you just swap out characters and themes.
Yeah,
and then you've made like a question, and you swap out extracts and stuff like that, and you know what roughly could come up, and you're just prepared for loads of different things, scenarios.
And again, going back to when I was speaking about discussing your homework with friends and colleagues, and I think the same applies with English. So I remember an English teacher of mine saying that it's a good idea for you guys to read each other's work, right? Because you can learn how somebody else has structured a story, like, or a
peer marking,
a description. Yeah. So that's
I used to read.
another benefit.
I used to read particularly in English, philosophy and history, like other people's other students' essays. But usually it would just make me feel, oh god, like they're so good. But then you can take some of their ideas, sort of use them in your own ones. So it was quite useful doing it for that. And then I had a friend, Rajivan, and he used to call up like pretty much just like constant, as in like every day, and just be like, John, have you done the homework? I was like, no, I haven't even looked at it. I just had my nap. and then I'm just about to have my dinner. And then he'd force me to, essentially I'd do it early. So
eager to do it.
Yeah, so I'd look at, because he was like, can you do problem like 3 or whatever, or question 3? I'd be like, so I'd take my homework out of my bag, and then I'd be like, oh, okay, I see why this is tricky, and then it'll kind of get me to crunch the problem over my dinner, as it were. Because I don't know, I'm one of those people I like having a problem, knowing what it is, going away, chilling out for a bit, and then coming back to it, and then I can solve it. Yeah. So rather than just tackling it right there and then.
Yeah, I'm the opposite. Again, I have to like dive in and like.
I know.
I have to fix. If there's a problem, I've got to fix it quick.
My wife's actually similar because like sometimes I just feed her a maths problem. I just like do that, and then she just looks at it, and then she won't stop until she solved it.
Yeah.
Like, and it's really funny.
I can't eat until I've solved whatever the problem is.
Like I gave her one for the flight back, from because we just went to Zante. I gave her a problem on the flight back, and she was like thinking about it, trying to solve it. So yeah, like.
You're still dishing out homework.
Yeah,
even on holiday.
Yeah, wife. Yeah, like yeah. I mean, I like. I've noticed generally that the students that do the homework and come back with it, and it's all completed, and they show you where they've messed up, they tend to do very well because they're clearly able to manage their time well to do it. And they're also organised enough to do it, which is also, I think, quite important for academic success. And they're also sort of diligent and hardworking enough to get it done. So I have noticed that the ones that get it, I don't know whether it's correlation or cause as a thing. So like, I don't know whether the homework makes them better. That's the quite difficult thing to work out, whether it's a correlation or a cause thing. So is the homework making them better, or are they just stronger students academically and thus they do that?
I mean, either way, the result's the same.
Yeah.
So.
No, I do think that the homework plays a big part. I've seen it with I've seen it with our students. The other thing that homework can help too is it can help you learn how to structure an answer. So for example, if I'm marking homework, I might, even if a student's got something correct, right, I might write down, okay, look, here's a better way to do it, right, and I'll write down my structure, and then they'll look at that, and I've literally seen it with our students. So they'll look at my structure, they'll copy that template, and then they'll use it in further examples. And I think this is again where completing your homework comes into play, because you start learning better ways of structuring your answers.
How much homework would you say is too much, or is there such a thing as too much?
I think it also depends on the level, right? So
this is what I was going to say. That's why I asked, because I've found a couple of statistics to.
Yeah, it's the age as well. And
I want to see what before I tell you what that says, I want to see what you think.
You want to see what I come up with. Okay.
So like primary, like year 3, year 6, year 9, G6, like what?
it depends on the position of the student as well. Because like I've had, like, for instance, for most primary school students, I don't think they need tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of homework. It's more about sort of homework that deals with specific problems. And so it's very targeted and has point. So there is pointless homework. You can just get so much that it's like you're drowning in homework and some of it's pointless. Like,
it can have the opposite effect. It could make you just switch off. Hate the subject, switch off. Like,
but like I'll give you an example. Like when I was preparing my wife's cousin for 11 plus, because it was so late notice. It was so late notice, like as in he only had like 3 months. I was peppering him with homework. Like it was a lot of homework, a lot for a kid to do. But I knew that he'd need to do it in order to get to the level. So I had to, despite the fact that I wouldn't usually level that much homework at a child of that age, I knew that I had to do it in his case. And then eventually he just, like at first he did have resistance towards it, but he got used to it. And to be honest, now he's at grammar school, it's quite normal to get a lot of homework. I think it helped his trajectory and sort of got him used to doing a lot of homework. That whereas like with me, because I didn't have that much homework at primary school, it was such a shock going to Forest, because I went from like 0 to 100. My parents were like kind of dismayed at how much I had as well, because they were like, it's too much homework, like he can't do it all.
See, for me, I was there in primary school as well.
Probably quite used to it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the rule that I've found is the 10-minute rule, it's called. And it says students should receive 10 minutes of homework per day with American. So it says first grade, which is year 2.
And then as you go up a grade, it adds 10 minutes.
And then you add an additional 10 minutes every year that you go up. So year 3, 20 minutes. And by the time you get to grade 12, which is A level, you should be on 120. I know we got that like in the middle of secondary school.
Yeah. No, I just remember it depends how long you take with homework, because I was a real perfectionist, like in year 7, believe it or not. Like in year 7 and 8, I used to like get basically full marks in most things because I'd spend so long trying to get it right. So because I wanted to make it perfect, and so I was like, sure, in school I was kind of doing quite well, but at home my homework was really, really good quality. And then I started to realize that I'm literally gonna like die of stress if I keep doing homework this way. I need to be more time efficient and sort of do the minimum required to get a decent mark, but not,
the issue that I found was you can follow those sorts of rules, and like most teachers probably do, but none of the other teachers take into account any of your other subjects. Yeah. I remember like we would be at school and they would set a big task for homework, like write this essay on whatever.
Yeah.
And people in the class would be like, oh, we've just come from, we'd say it to the teacher like, well, we can't do that by 3 days time because we've just got this coursework from physics that we need to do by then. And like they were like, oh yeah, I don't care. This is what you're doing for this class. Yeah, deal with it. They literally just said that.
Like sometimes because you had like 5 different homeworks, and I was like, well,
they're all due on the same day.
Each of these are like, each of these are sort of massive pieces of work that take like 1 to 2 hours, and it'll be towards your final grade or whatever as well.
So sometimes
actually by A level, I was able to. I'll say this, like it made me really, really fast. So when they used to have these like 20 markers in history, like 20 mark essays. I used to be able to knock those out in 10 minutes. Like a whole essay in 10 minutes. And I got so fast at doing it. And I used to be able to, I worked out roughly how to get like an A.
But yeah, that's a good point. So what you're basically saying is you figured out a way to be more efficient. You've figured out a way to just still get it done. So I think that's important. Like, it doesn't sort of matter. I don't think if you're in school, I don't think it sort of matters how much you're given. You will learn to find, or you should learn to find a way to get all of your homework done, completed, handed in on time. It's partly to sort of help you become a sort of better organized person. You'll need it when you enter sort of working life. Being more organized.
Yeah, so you're saying that if we gave John more work, more things would get done quicker?
I think that's what we're saying, John.
I think we're going to give you some more work, John.
I feel like I've got enough, but yeah. I don't know, like because I do feel sometimes I had to compromise in quality, because there was like for instance with that history example, I worked out how to get like 16 out of 20, but I knew that it's the sort of law of diminishing returns, because I know that if I spend like an extra, like double the time, I can probably get 20 or 19 or something like that. But then I was like, okay, well, 16 is like, okay, 16 out of 20, that's like 80%. So it is 80%. So I worked out roughly how to sort of do well,
you go
and
over,
maintain that level.
Go over the boundary without
exceeding it.
yeah.
Like stressing myself out.
I think I've got better at handling a massive workload, like doing this.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Like, for me, my school thing was the other way around. Like in primary school, I was really good. And then when I hit year 8, year 9, I started to go the other way. Whereas we crossed over in like year 8, year 9. I think we were going in different directions.
I felt like, like key stage 3 at the end of year 9, things started to click. Like for me, like year 7, 8 and 9, I had to work so hard.
See, I was the opposite. Like that sort of year, those sorts of years, didn't need to work that hard and I was doing fine.
Yeah.
But
I really, really struggled. I was like bottom of the class in year 7. I was bottom of the class, like in most things, because I just didn't know how to do. Apart from English, I was really good at English because I was kind of at the top of the class in English, but bottom in everything else. It was really weird. Oh, history I was quite good at too. So like essay writing subjects. Probably because I just read. I spent most of my childhood reading. Yeah,
I mean, I dropped essay writing subjects as soon as I could.
Yeah. Maths was a total mystery for me. Like I was like, what the hell is this? I didn't really know what I was doing in maths.
Yeah, see, that's the one I was the top at. That and I gravitated towards all of the greatest, all the stuff you don't like. I gravitated towards that. DT, music, all of that sort of stuff. That's what I gravitated towards. And maths because I did a lot of like stuff when I was younger.
Yeah, the Kumon.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. I mean, I'll say this about Kumon, like the people who do Kumon are very structured and logical. But then I feel like
I hated how much time it took, and it was just like boring.
It is repetitive.
It's repeating the same thing over and over again. But like, I remember being in like year 5, and we were just moving on to multiplication. And then everyone else was learning 2 by 2, and the teacher put it on the board, and I was like, done. And like the entire class just went, like they just couldn't believe that I did it in like a second.
Yeah.
So, but from that point, going towards like A level, I went the other way. It got more and more complicated. I didn't do enough work.
It's weird. The harder the maths got, the more I enjoyed it. Whereas like I found calculation really difficult. I was like, I couldn't do like really basic stuff. And then like when I saw like a worded problem, something like that,
You're really good at complex stuff, but really struggle with simple things. And I'm good with simple things, but struggle with really complicated, like maths.
So it was just good at both.
No, I wouldn't say that. What I was going to ask, like, have you ever gone into an exam and been underprepared and done
Yes.
relatively well?
Oh yeah, many times.
Yeah. Most of my GCSEs.
University too, like.
I didn't have any exams at uni.
But to be honest, like some of it for me was general knowledge, because like that's the thing, because I spent so much time reading, so sometimes the stuff on the exam I knew just like it was part of my knowledge base already. So like things about like archaeology, there were things that I remembered from reading about it, and then when I went to uni, we had this big module on like Greece and Rome, and I was fine with it because I knew most of the stuff anyway, so I didn't feel like I needed to work. So I got like one off a first in it, 1 mark off, and that's pretty good considering I didn't really do any work towards it.
That's where I'd say, yeah. So I think this whole thing about, because there's always that I mean, I don't know if you guys had it, but there's always that one kid who claims that, right, he hasn't done a lot of work.
Yeah.
But then
Maybe John.
No,
that one kid who,
you know, when you come out of an exam.
And they're like, right, okay, I've absolutely, done really well in that exam, smashed that exam, and I haven't done a lot of work. But I really think that is, I think that's a myth, and I think if you've done well in an exam, and you've been underprepared, undercooked, I don't think that's something to be. I mean, my personal opinion is that's not something to sort of be proud of. It's what I tell what I tell our students as well, because we get so many that come in and they're like, "Oh yeah, but sir, this person X, person Y, they never do any work, and they're always coming out and doing really well in exams." And then I stop and I ask them, and I'm like, "Did they tell you that?" And they're like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "Do you really believe them?" Because it's just, and like to give you an example, so I had a university exam that I was very underprepared for. Didn't do a lot of work until the night before, and I came out and I did do very well, but I didn't feel good about it. I knew that I got a little bit lucky there, and so even after doing well, I said to myself, right, okay, that's my studying habits need to change. That's not happening. That's not happening again. And I think it was like 87% that I got. But rather than getting that, you stop. I'd said to my, and this is not me showing off, but I said to myself, right,
there's people that we were thinking about.
No. I mean, you start. I said to myself, no, I can do better than this, right? And when I actually sat there studying, preparing myself for harder exams, like I've got lower scores in exams before, but I'm very proud of those because I know that I've had to work really hard for those, and those have been some tough exams. And I've always noticed a big difference as when I go into an exam underprepared compared to when I go into an exam prepared. Every single time it's been a sort of 100% hit record. I've always done better, and I always feel better coming out. So I always tell students, look, don't take the risk, prepare, right? And I think this is where completing homework regularly comes into play. If you are completing homework regularly, it's part of your preparation for exams. I don't know, what do you think?
We've got a friend, Joe.
Yeah, I know.
And
jammiest person you'll ever meet.
I wouldn't say, like he's one of those people who's like he can get, basically he got like all A's for A level. He can coast and do very well, but I think he just learns differently from others, and I think that's the thing. There are certain people who can appear very relaxed in their learning style, but they're taking it all in, and you don't realize how much work is actually going on in there. So for instance, maths is, you're probably like, okay, it's one of those things, you sit down, you've got to do some questions and things like that. But this guy would sit in his chair, like do some sunbathing, and because I've sat with him and we were revising together, and he just used to like read the maths book. I don't know why. like for me, I was baffled because I actually have to work on a problem, so I have to work on problems to actually get it. But then he'll just like read, and I think he's just so good at taking in information and processing it. I think maybe at a very high level, it would, if he went on to do like maths at university, it probably would have caught up with him. But like for like A level, and most of, he did his A level 1 year early for maths as well, and he was just able to take in so much information so easily. And even when we were, because we were doing the same subjects, so he'd also use me to revise, because
bouncing ideas.
Because he used to just bounce ideas off me, and in that process, he'd learn a lot. So that was his form of learning, and it wasn't the most sort of. It looked so effortless, but for him, it really worked. So I think there are some people who can look like they're not working hard, but they are, because you just don't know what's going on behind there.
Yeah, but you said some people there. That's
it's like
a small.
I've only met like
minority. It's not.
He was weird because like most scholarship kids, they're quite hard, they're really hard working, and you really see it. You can see how much work they do, but he was a bit different, just different different mind, like, so just different from everyone else.
When would you say is the best time to do homework? Like, say you have a class on a Tuesday and you have to hand it in the Tuesday after. I have my own thoughts again on this, but
yeah, I what I always suggest they do is so if it's with maths or physics, I tell them, rather than, so I might give them a lot, right, or what seems like a lot, and I virtually always say, I don't want you to do it all on one day, right? Break it up.
Yeah.
So if I've given you 50 questions, break it up, do a little bit across 5 days, or do a little bit across 4 days, right? Because I find that when they do it all on one day, if it's sort of the day before it's due in, a lot of the times they've forgotten that sort of topic or that content by that time, right? If they do it too soon, then when it comes to the following class, if I give them a warm-up question on what we've done the previous week,
yep,
even though they've done their homework, again, it's sort of, with a lot of students, it's sort of, they're a little rusty. It's sort of, it's gone out of their mind.
Yeah.
So I always suggest do a little bit across 4 or 5 days, or a little bit every day if you want. But the more days you're, especially with subjects like, I think maths, chemistry, physics, you want to be doing a little bit every single single day.
When I've got like an 11 plus kid, and they sometimes struggle to know how much to do on each day. So sometimes I'll even write what they do on each day. So do this part this day, do this part on another day. I know, like with a class, generally it's quite hard to do that. But if you've got like a very small group, so like 2 or 3, then I find it quite useful to state exactly what they're doing on each day. Sometimes that works well with one-to-one as well, because I think there you're working so closely with the student, you can specify exactly what to do on each day, and I space it out. Because I think in something like maths, every subject, a little bit every day is better than doing tons. It's like practicing the piano, doing violin. I used to do this thing where I used to squeeze in a lot of my practice like the day before the lesson, rather than space it out. And like now, if I'm practicing for something, so if I want to learn a piece or something like that, I know that I've got a specific plan for each day, so I can master the piece quickly and tackle it in small sections.
I tend to do similar like thought process, but I don't really set it as a day by day thing. It's about getting it from short term memory into long term memory, and similarly, if you do it the day you get it set or the day after, it will remain in your short term memory. You'll come back the week after, and you won't remember, because you have a lot of stuff going on within that week. You won't remember how to do it, and if you do it the day before it's due in, you won't remember the process of like how to tackle the question. So I tend to say 3 days, 2 to 3 days after your class, so it's still in your short-term memory just about, and you can recall it, and it will reinforce and it will start to push it into long-term. So I don't really set it as day by day, which I mean, it obviously works. It's repetition. It's like going to the gym. Like you're going to get,
like you have
to get reps in for it to be retained in your memory. So it's about pushing it from short term into long term.
Especially with, say, GCSE students, I'd usually go, okay, well, if you think about like a maths topic, there's, say, surds or something like that. You've got it on a basic concept level.
Do you want to tell them why I'm laughing?
That's one of my nicknames for him. He loves maths, and his name's Surith. Sounds kind of like Surd. So it's Sardinia. So yeah, like because maths a particular skill can get quite deep. So foundation level students, they're doing fairly basic third stuff. And to start with, you're just looking at square roots and then sort of writing them in the form square root A times square root B, and that kind of thing. Just practicing the basic concepts of surds, and then you get onto rationalizing, and then you start doing problem solving with surds, and then using it in other types of problem. So I think like a lot of topics are much deeper than you think. So what you tend to find is when students get to exam time, if they haven't had a lot of exam practice, they're like, I understand the topic, I get the topic, but then they can't actually do exam questions. Yeah, they can't apply it because they haven't done that final step, the application step. And you can find that in their Excel book, like the one that has exam style questions.
Yeah.
Once you sort of learn the concept in detail, then you need to start sort of practicing in a different way. And I think sometimes in schools, I've noticed their homework, they're dealing with a concept in too basic a manner for the student to actually apply it. So sometimes I feel like the homework has less value when it's just dealing with a basic understanding of the topic and doesn't push them, especially the ones who are going for like 9s and 8s and sort of the higher grades.
Do you know what? From what I've seen, I think that literally the total opposite. I've seen both A level and GCSE, some really, really good pieces of homework that have been given, and I've had to, like with some of our A level students, I've sat down and explained like, yeah, okay, this looks like a difficult piece of homework, but this is why you've been given this piece. And I think.
But then that was some of your, like for instance, your A level maths students quite good. They go to very, very good colleges. But then I found this, especially with foundation students in maths, they really, really struggle with. A lot of them seem to be sort of hovering around a 3, like 1 to 3, rather than the 4 and 5 and achieving passing grades. I think one of the reasons is you do actually need to apply a lot of knowledge in foundation. So I've sometimes found that their homework can be a little basic, like a little too basic, considering they've got their exams fairly soon. It probably varies a lot, and that's the thing with homework is you have, different teachers, different schools.
Well, I think it's. Remember we spoke about the zone of proximal development.
Yeah.
Your work should be, if this is where you are, your work should be slightly ahead.
Yeah.
So you're constantly reaching. If you get at the same level, they get bored and switch off. If you get too difficult, they get bored and switched off. So you have to do it slightly higher than their capability in order to push them
Very
forward.
different. I think that's a difficult balance to get right in a class. Like,
You've got several different people.
I mean, I don't know. I see. I think if you look for value, you'll find it. I don't think it's. I sort of disagree. Try and ask yourself, what can I learn from this? Right, there will be something you can learn from it. I mean, even if it is, like you're saying, basic homework, right? It's probably basic to make sure that your foundations are strong, right? And to make sure that, okay, if you get a question like that, you can tackle that relatively quickly. It gives you more time to focus on other questions in an exam. I think I'd like to sort of put trust in teachers and say that, right, okay, they're doing what they're doing for a particular reason. Right, they're setting that task for you for a particular reason. And what I say is, if you are finding it basic, you're getting everything right, you're finding it easy, go back to him or her and say, look, I found this quite easy. Do you recommend? Is there anything else you can give me that will test my understanding of this particular topic?
We've had a few students that actually sort of request more. Like they get some homework and they like push me beyond.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
or I want to do more of this.
Yeah.
It does happen, but not all the time. But some students are actually, they really, really want to understand the concept and deeply, and they're aiming for like really high grades and stuff like that. So they push themselves in that way, and they want more, not less. The majority either, and I'd say quite a few students don't do enough homework. Like they don't.
Yeah.
Completion rates.
I think when I was younger, myself included. So.
Yeah, me too.
I was really good with homework. I think I've never missed a deadline intentionally for homework.
I mean, I think as I
have done the wrong homework. Which is
No, I can believe.
like a maths teacher will be like,
Page
it's
56, and you're like, oh, I did page 65.
No, I did page 350. And then I was like, yeah, and then sometimes I'm like, I can't do this. But then that helped me learn, because at least I looked at it and then I was like, okay, how do you do this? Why did she set this? And then I come back and then the teacher will be like, oh, John, you're not meant to have done this.
Just as a final topic, what would you say are the negatives?
Stress. Some stress is necessary for development, I'd say.
Yeah.
But then at certain points for me at Forest, I found it too much. Like it was just too much.
Again, it's especially when you get homework from several different classes all at once.
Yeah. There was times when I thought it was not feasible for me to complete it all.
Yeah, and that's
So-
when you don't hand in some specific.
But I always tried, but I thought it was like it meant that I had to go to bed at like 1 and that kind of thing. So I felt that sacrifice wasn't worth it, because then like it will mess up my next day and that kind of thing. And then sometimes just the fact that I think a specific student's circumstances matter. So for instance, I had choir once and it ended at like 9 p.m. and then I had to do homework. So it's like it was impossible for me to get it all done, because I was pretty much booked out in terms of time.
Yeah.
So
That's similar.
so stress when there's too much. But I think a little bit of stress is good, just to practice being in that state for a little bit. Yeah. Because it's inevitable that you end up in a stressful situation, so you need to practice being in that situation.
You experience it early on, so you kind of learn how to deal with it.
Sometimes sometimes there can be homework that's just very time consuming but doesn't deliver optimum value, like a homework task that isn't well thought through,
Like drawing a Coke can, for example.
well, for Sue it was pointless. It put him off art. So yeah, like there probably are.
I mean, I wouldn't say that put me off. I just didn't. I find it very difficult to like that subject.
Doesn't put you off drinking the drink either. So.
There's also like when you get to like the college ages and stuff like that. I think at all ages they need socialization and stuff like that. And I've noticed that some kids are so sort of wrapped up in books, doing homework, and I mean they're the type of student that like puts a lot of pressure on themselves to learn a lot. Then they're probably not spending enough time developing socially.
Yeah, you need to be well rounded.
But
again, it's a practice for work life balance.
So
It's a big thing.
Yes, so I'd say in conclusion, homework is definitely more beneficial than it is not, for the reasons we've mentioned in this video.
yeah, I'd agree with that.
Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching as always. And we'll see you next month.